So today I'm going to talk about why I am leaving law enforcement. So, been in law enforcement since 2011. Worked for a small city department, probably about 20 officers total. I was a young 22-year-old guy, learning the ropes, super excited, right? Had a lot of fun with this department. The camaraderie was unmatched. You know, I saw better camaraderie at this department than I saw in the Marine Corps and that I've seen thus far. The only issue is I'm someone who likes to work their butt off and achieve milestones in a career or in life. I don't want to be stagnant. I don't want to sit around and just be, you know, just your average Joe Blow. So I eventually moved on to a bigger department, a sheriff's office, where they had a lot more deputies and programs and SWAT and K-9 and all that. And I did pretty much everything under the sun, with the exception of Marine deputy stuff and snowmobile patrol and all that. But what I've learned from law enforcement in today's day and age, it's definitely a broken system. You know, you could be the hardest worker in the room. You could be the most motivated, good attitude, hard worker, break your back for the department, answer every call from the department, and that doesn't cut it, you know? What I've personally seen in my career is if you know someone within the department who's higher ranking, you're going to go a long way, because there's some, I'll tell you right now, in my area, there's some very average, below average people in charge of a lot of people. And that is just crazy to me. Like, there is no reason why this person should be in their position. But it's just, I don't know, is that the entire workforce, or is that just law enforcement? Like, is that how the world runs? Like, is everywhere like that? Like, every job at a factory, at McDonald's, like, you could be the hardest worker and they don't give a shit. It's just, oh, I'm going to promote him because he is my buddy. Like, I don't know, you guys comment in the comment section, let me know what your experience is in your work, in your career field. But, you know, little backstory of my career in law enforcement. Between 2015 and 2020, those are some of my favorite years, because we're allowed to be cops. Like, we're allowed to do our job. We're allowed to, you know, take the right people to jail who needed to go to jail. And those who needed help from us, genuinely needed help, we were able to take care of them and help them. Once 2020 hit, it seemed like there was a huge shift. Like, I went from being a cop, running and gunning, to I became like a trash collector, a counselor, a teacher, a parent, a nurse, a doctor, a relationship coach. And it's just like, you know, I am not any of those things. Like, I am not educated enough to be those things. I am not versed in those roles. I am a cop, and I want to do cop things, you know. But it's just law enforcement right now. You know, there are departments, and this is my department before, was if they ask for a deputy, you have to respond, doesn't matter what it is, because it's community policing. I'm like, no, it's not community policing. Like, you're missing the point of community policing. Community policing, what I was taught as a young guy, is you're involved in your little area of your community that people will build trust and can come to you with issues that they maybe before didn't want to come to you with because they don't trust the police. You know, it's building that rapport with the community to help them, you know, and help them not become victims of crimes. There's more to it than just, hey, I need a deputy here to come scare my kid. Like, that's just not how it works. But that's just the way law enforcement's changed. And did you know, actually, according to state and federal law enforcement isn't required to respond to anything that's not a violent crime. So what that means is law enforcement has to respond to serious violent felonies in progress or that have just occurred. But besides that, like, all your fluff calls, like my kid's mom's not listening to me and letting me see my kid and blah blah blah, like, that's all just fluff. Like, departments do that just to say, hey, we're out in the community doing our due diligence. But it's such a disservice that they're doing that, because then you get someone who's taking 10 to 15 calls a shift on this silly stuff that they don't want to go be productive and actually look for people who are, targeting innocent individuals and making them victims. And, it's just crazy. It's such a broken system. Like, I love my brothers and sisters in blue. I love what I was able to do in 15 years. But it's just such a flawed system, and I'm just over it, Another thing too is, so back to my sheriff's office days, I ran the SWAT team for a while. I was on the SWAT team for many years. I got in charge of the SWAT team. I had a canine, one of the most productive canines in that department's history. Some of the biggest drug seizures, in a long time. My dog was very obedient, very well trained, and I was a supervised a team of about 4 or 5 people, and had my stuff squared away, right? Usually when I made a decision as a supervisor, I was told, good job, good decision making. But then in 2020, that shifted, and it was like, why did you make the decision? Why did you do things the way you did them? And it was kind of weird, right? Because it was like I had a different person telling me what I used to always do was awesome, now telling me that it's not awesome, and I'm doing things weirdly, right? In 2020, I had a guy who I taught how to be a cop. In 2020, at that point in time, I was 9 years in law enforcement. I had a guy who was 3.5 years in law enforcement, who went from a slick sleeve to now becoming my supervisor as a staff sergeant. And I was a sergeant. I taught him how to be a cop as a sergeant, because it was who he knew, right? It wasn't about what he did. He did nothing. It wasn't until he got promoted over all of us sergeants that he started being an FTO and getting involved in all that stuff. But prior to that, he could give a shit less. He would do his job and go home, which is fine, right? But why promote that? Like, it's just crazy to me. I've already made my decision that I'm gonna get out of law enforcement by June 1st of this year. I now work for a state entity, and I enjoy the job. And any career path I've had in law enforcement, I enjoy interacting with the community and the people, and like, that's not an issue. Like, I can do that all day. Like, I enjoy being a good human being and helping other human beings just get one step closer to being better. You're showing up on their worst day, and why not take a little bit of that stress off their shoulders and help guide them into a positive direction? Like, the general public's always been one of my favorite parts. But that's why we always say, you wear a vest with panels in the front and panels in the back. Panels in the front is for people out in the community who don't like cops and want to kill you. The panels in the back is for your department, admin, and coworkers that are backstabbing you. And that's so true. I've seen that so much. I've seen good cops get pushed out because they didn't fit the mold, and I've seen shit cops get promoted. I think, so when I finally left the sheriff's office, my breaking point was I've been passed up 7 times. I'd been passed up for detectives 5 times, 6 times actually, and I got passed up for staff sergeant once. And they could never give me a straight answer as to why I didn't get promoted. And I was like, it is what it is, right? If it was someone who was way more qualified, way more experienced than me, I can live with that. But it wasn't. It was people who had been demoted, who had been wrote up, who were wishy-washy about even staying there to work there for long term, who were getting into those detective spots because they didn't want to work rotating shifts anymore, and they didn't want to work nights and weekends, and that was the only reason why they took that detective spot. It wasn't because they genuinely wanted to be detective. They just generally didn't want to do rotating shift and patrol work. And so I finally asked my boss, well, what do I have to do to make this something that could be an option in my career? Like, what do I got to do differently? What do I have to improve on? And they'd always tell me, oh, you're doing such a good job. We just like where you're at, and we don't want to see you leave the patrol division because you do such a good job. And I'm like, well, I've been doing patrol for, at that point in time, 10 years, 11 years. I want to do something different to preserve my sanity and to keep me going in this department, because if I keep doing patrol, like, I'm gonna get burnt out. And they didn't understand that. Well, they failed to understand that, or didn't care to understand that. And so eventually it just got to the point where I just didn't want to work there anymore. For one, I was never going to progress again. They made it very clear. For two, and this is just a theory of mine, I had called, and made a complaint to the AG's office because one of our prior sheriffs had done some unethical stuff, and I wasn't okay with that. And so I had called the AG's office to open an investigation in this guy, and they ended up not finding anything, which is unfortunate because I knew about it. We were told about it. We were all aware of it, but it was kind of one of those hush-hush things that got swept under the rug. And I think after that is when I kind of got targeted. Like, I kind of got, this guy is going to call the AG's office to investigate the department because we're doing things we shouldn't. And I think after that, my career's pretty much done. Which is unfortunate, right? We're supposed to be doing the right thing no matter when anyone's looking or not. And yet you have leadership that's not doing that, and they're trying to get away with certain things, and you call them out on that, and then now you're the bad guy. So, yeah, that's my rant for today, and just kind of want to ask your guys' insight, like, who out there who maybe used to be law enforcement, why'd you get out? What changed your perspective? At the end of the day, I support law enforcement. I'm pro law enforcement, but I'm also anti-shitty law enforcement. Like, if you suck at your job, you shouldn't be there. You're just doing it because you want to check off a box, or they hired you because they just needed manpower. Like, I don't support that. So, pro law enforcement, anti-shitty law enforcement. Anyways, what are your guys' thoughts? Shoot some comments and let's have discussion.